GM, Mr. Jemmy. How are you, my friend?
Hey, morning. Do you want me to line the music for a little bit while we wait for some crew to
Yeah,
start getting in?
yeah, let's do
All
that.
right, let's see what we got on the DJ today. I have no idea what it is playing, but let's see. It's one of those gacha experience. GM everyone. All right, it's time to retire our DJ and pass over the time to Benny. GM everyone.
GM, welcome everybody to another Foundry Sessions. Believe we are on episode 5 now. Boy, oh boy, are the weeks just flying by. Very special one. We have BONK Advisory up. Kieran, How are we feeling this morning?
GM guys, feeling good, thanks. Just had my second espresso of the day, so I'm ready and raring to go.
Absolutely love to hear it. Well, I think I'll probably just pass it off to you if you want to kick things off with the intro and anything that you may have planned to start with, and then we can kind of
Yeah,
transition into more of a live Q&A.
brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I think plan of attack for me today, guys, was keep it short and sweet for you. I'd prepared a roughly 10-minute presentation to run through on pitching, which is the focus of today. But I thought the Q&A would be much more useful for people. And I know everyone's always busy, so rather than just talk at you for the whole time, that was my plan. So I thought I'll share my screen and then can go into maybe an intro about me. I think quite a few people in the audience I know or know me already, so they're probably sick of the sight of me, but sure, now that's grand. And let me put it in presentation mode and then let me know the question of the year. Can you see my screen?
Yes, sir. Looks great.
Wicked. Well, yeah, nice to meet everyone. So obviously I'm Kieran, I'm co-founder of BONK Advisory, together with my partner Alex Hall, who I think a bunch of you know as well. And together we've built and raised and scaled businesses. We've raised over $25 million, scaled to over 400 people, even had a $100 million exit. Sadly, that one was Alex. I have exited, but bootstrap businesses, so slightly different. But what do we do? Well, our tagline, we're independent board level advisory for early stage startups. Simply put, we help you guys build better businesses. We really, really enjoy the early stage, 0 to 1. That's the exciting bit for us. We typically work with technical teams, helping them with commercial and operational side of stuff. We do work with a few commercially strong teams, I should say, but they see the value in us still. We help with things like narrative, go-to-market, partnerships, pitch decks, and more, hence the talk today. So think of us as long-term independent advisors on your side of the table. So what am I talking to you guys about today? It's pitching with purpose, hard truths, helpful tips, and a bit of bonk, although I won't be putting any in your wallet, sorry. But what is the focus of today? It's really trying to help you guys nail down how you're thinking about pitching. I wanted to just run through 4 really high level points for everyone that I think are universally useful, and then go across to the Q&A. So if I kick off, the first one here is unclear language. And sorry, I'm going to flip between seeing if anyone's asked anything in the chat, apart from Kid Paddle and Matthew being sarcastic. Love you guys. So here we go. First one is unclear language. I mean, this is something we see way too often in decks, and it means a couple different things. But from the first principle, it's founders often try to cram like every brilliant feature, advantage, every single technical achievement they're proud of, either into their opening line or throughout the deck. I get it. Your product's amazing. You've been working really hard on it, but your solution statement needs to be simple and sharp, as that's the hook that gets people going. The ability to describe complex ideas or topics in a simple way is incredibly powerful, and that works beyond just your pitch deck, but also with your go-to-market and general marketing positioning. An example I like to use was when we were raising for NeoSwap. So we raised $3.5 million over 18 months, and we did that while we had FTX crashing, Luna, Celsius, Voyager, you name it, felt like it was going on. But when we started, we had a very, very complex way we described ourselves that we thought made sense. And that was that we were these multi-way, multi-asset, multi-peer trading platform using algorithms to enhance liquidity, blah, 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 blah. It made sense to us because we were really close to the problem, but not to a lot of other people. And this took 6+ months of iteration, and we tried a bunch of different taglines. But what we ended up with was, we let you spend your assets like money. That's how simple it was. It's clean, it's intriguing, it made people say, wait, so how does that work? But they understood what you were trying to communicate. Once you've got them on the hook, you can go in. So I just would put a challenge to everyone there to think, what's your version of that sentence? Keep stripping back your problem statement to what really matters. Keep refining it. It's going to take time. It's going to take a bunch of iterations, but keep glowing. Another point around this in unclear language is just how many buzzwords I see in decks and also technical language, but with no clear explanation of the benefits that your product's actually bringing to users. That drives me mad. It's something we constantly work on with portcos, because I think it also, like I said earlier, applies to your marketing. You have to think about clear communication. And what you really want to drive home to investors generally is the benefits of your product. When we're talking about a problem statement, if we're talking about the product, again, it's how the product works, which directly feeds into point 2, if I clear on, which is no narrative. So you've got unclear language and you've got no narrative. It's no wonder that decks feel jumbled for a lot of people. I mean, we've seen so many decks that feel like a collection of slides that are stapled together. There's no through line. There's no story being built throughout the deck. And when there's no story, people forget you. So I'm not saying you need a Pixar arc or Claynosaurs, maybe a better example, but there has to be some thought behind how the slides flow, and that will then get people to realize why they should care. At the end of the day, people buy stories, and that might be a story about you as a founding team. It might be about the product development. It might be about the problem you're solving, but that's what they invest in, especially early stage. It is investing in belief. It might be belief in the problem, it might be belief in the team, it might be a combination of all three, but you've got to drive a narrative so people can understand, why does this problem matter and why are you the team to solve it? And that's something that we constantly drill through people. Another example I often give when I'm speaking to people about this is with NeoSwap. When we were developing the pitch, we actually started in an unusual way, and we started with a story about our CEO John, and that when he was 10 years old, his dad gave him and his siblings all their Christmas presents that were wrapped and unlabeled, and they had to randomly open them and then trade to get what they wanted amongst each other as siblings. Kind of weird, right? But it is really memorable. And it also then set the scene for the rest of the deck, which was John has been obsessed with this problem of fair trading since he was a kid. He built his whole career around this and his studies, and this formed his business. This is the dude to solve this problem, and the team he's assembled around him. So that's a narrative. You can do it in different ways. That's just one example, but I just would again encourage people to go back, look at your deck. Not all of you need to have childhood trauma to tell that story, but think about your narrative. You know, does your deck tell a story about the problem and about why you are the team to solve it? Right, next point, nearly there. Your deck is way too long. I'm not sure if Meta's in the audience or a few people, but if you've been like me, you know, I just see it all the time, 20 plus slides. I get it. Again, it's your baby. You want to show everything, every little feature, every market insight, every angle, and how ingenious it all is. But your deck isn't meant to explain everything. It's meant to get people interested. The point of a deck usually is to get a follow-up call. You're not meant to be exhaustive in your description of your business. Generally, I would say target 10 to 12 slides. If you can, that's brilliant. It's enough to deliver a clear solution, a compelling narrative, and a reason to care. And that's it. That gets VCs or investors on the hook. You've got to understand, which feeds into the next point, but that VCs are looking at hundreds of decks a week sometimes. I mean, back when I was working in VC land, I could be going through 20, 30 decks a day in busy periods. And you just open, glance, and skim. You're spread thin. You're trying to wrap your head around complex, sometimes new topics, but still complex topics or products. So, you know, generally, if I wasn't interested within 60 seconds, I had to disqualify it. Maybe fair or unfair, but people need to understand that's what you got to do, because you need some sort of early qualifying criteria to filter through just the sheer volume. So you need to shorten your deck. And then when you pair that with clearer language and a narrative, you're going to get people interested. That's when they ask for a meeting. That's when you can bring the depth and let them ask all the technical questions under the sun. You may have an appendix for the appendices, but you don't need to. And they can ask these technical questions and dive in. So again, understand what your deck is there for. It's there to get you to the next conversation. It doesn't need to be a 25 slide deck with a 50-page appendix as well. And then on to the last point for you guys, which is understand VC motivation. So I think not enough people actually sit and think about this from the other side, and some people aren't familiar with it, which you can't blame them about. But VCs aren't villains. I know that Twitter they're sometimes made out to be. But you need to sit back and understand your business and VC motivations, because not every great business is venture backable. That doesn't mean it's not angel backable, but it might mean it's not venture backable, and that's okay. But I'm going to assume like all of you here today are looking to raise or will be soon, given the involvement. But VC math is power law driven. They need big exits. It's something you hear a lot, but it is true. The whole point is to fund moonshots, because that is fund math. You need to have a logical case for why you will be $1 billion business. Again, I know that's something people have heard before, but it's true. And you understand why. It's because they need to get behind being able to understand this, so that they can justify, from a fund perspective, investing in your business, because you will be able to drive the returns they need to make the math work. At the end of the day, they have LPs, limited partners, who invest in the business, the venture fund, and they need to be returning capital to them. So you need to get them bought into the size of the market, and then paint a clear picture of how you will dominate it and justify that exit. The other thing with VC motivations is to understand fund mandates. Fund mandates matter. So what does that mean? Well, usually a fund will raise with a particular thesis. It may be a vertical, it may be something broader than that, but it might be they're investing in DeFi, it might be something that they're only investing in consumer products. So you need to understand who you're speaking to and what their mandate is. Because if you have a great idea, but you're speaking to a fund with the wrong vertical, doesn't matter how good your pitch is, you're not going to get a check. So take the time to understand who you're pitching to and why you are a fit for them versus just the spray and pray approach. If there are a couple of funds, for example, that are really dream investors for you guys, I do encourage people to sometimes take the time to build some custom slides for them for when you do reach out and share your pitch deck with them. It gives you a chance to stress, maybe in a less obvious way, but why you are really relevant to them and their thesis or mandate, and you can swap those slides in or out. Just a side note, because people will raise in different ways here. If you do conclude you're not a venture business, that's fine. I mean, there are alternatives, as we mentioned, angels, strategic investors who maybe do smaller checks but fit in a different way, or bootstrapping. Every path has its trade-offs, but generally here, I think most people are looking to raise a round and then go further. So it's just key that you understand the game you're playing, and then you're able to sort of tailor what your outreach is based on that. And when you bring it all together, it just makes a much more compelling pitch for people, because what you want to do when you think about all these 4 points I've raised today is just make the lift easy for people. You've got clear language, you're telling a clear story and a narrative that people can buy into. It's a shorter deck, so people can appreciate your communication skills and they buy into the idea. And because you understand who you're reaching out to, you've given them a relevant pitch and why it fits into their thesis. So you're just making the lift easier for the people on the other side, rather than a generic general approach. So they're the 4 main points. I wanted to keep it short, like I said, and can move on to a Q&A session. But I hope that made sense to people and is useful. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think that deck is a reflection of what I'm saying here. It's short, it's simple, it's clear, and that's what you really want to be targeting with people.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop it in the chat, or we can also bring you up on stage to ask it yourself. I also have some questions that I'll just throw out there. Do you have any stance on preparing decks for pitches where they're going into the call specifically and kind of talking behind the scenes, or as scenes are coming up? Or decks that are more meant for just kind of sending over to teams, not needing any context or description, usually more text heavy? Any preference there, or should teams have maybe a version for both situations?
Yeah, I mean, great question. My preference is you have one for both. There's usually a huge overlap between the two, but it's similar to the 4th point about understanding VC motivations. If you're going into particular meetings, you can then have a few, more customized and targeted slides to people to say, hey, this is why we think we are a good fit for you guys. It's not that if you're a strong team, you don't want to be necessarily pitching the VC in the way people think. You position yourself as, we're going to be a competitive deal and we want to make sure we're a good fit. But part of that is collaboration, and you equally want to see how the other side of the table responds to that. Um, a quick story. It's not directly related to what you said there, but when we were raising NeoSwap, the day FTX crashed, we were closing about 750K from a couple of different funds and an angel. And sadly, one of the angels had a lot of his money on FTX and wasn't able to do the round. He was brilliant with his communication though, and super supportive. The fund we were talking to, that will remain nameless, came on the phone to us and didn't ask how anything was going and just said, we want more advisory shares and we want to cut your valuation in half, and basically tried to screw us to the wall. It was a really good opportunity because we just said, that's great, thanks, we don't want your money. We saw in the first bit of crunch time who they were, and instead of coming to try and help us and support us, they tried to screw us. And so you've got to think it's important who you let on the cap table. And part of having some of those custom slides is an opportunity to do that and ask maybe friendly, but either tougher or challenging questions to investors.
Awesome. And I think that kind of leads into my next question. Red flags to look out for when pitching to VCs or angel investors. It sounds like in that example, the communication was a clear one. Is there any other maybe consistent trends or themes that you see people should kind of keep an eye out for or try to be at least aware of?
Yeah, there's a few that are, I guess, more obvious, which is it's not an obsession with token. I think that a lot of Web3 and Web3 native investors want some sort of token or token warrant. I understand that for some of them that's their thesis, but it's how they're thinking about the token and the relationship with it. Are they interested in a quick flip basically, or are they looking longer term for the partnership where they go, we understand you may or may not have one, we'd like a token warrant and how it's structured. So I'd look at how they approach that. That's a big one for me. You want long-term partnerships there. I think the other thing is asking for references from portfolio companies. We do that even internally, and we're not a VC. We work in a different way, but you want to be able to speak to a range of different portfolio companies, both successful and unsuccessful ones. I think it's also interesting to speak to some of the ones that are struggling. Not because that will be the VC's fault. It's not, but you want to hear how they have behaved throughout that. Have they been supportive or have they just kind of dumped them and pulled back? So I think if they're not willing to give references, that's usually a red flag for me as well. They're sort of the main two, because I think the other thing then is it's not necessarily a red flag, but it is getting to know people and taking the time to get to know them, to think to see if you think they are a good fit for your cap table and can add value. That would be they'd be the three that come to mind for me.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Chandon asked, what do VCs look or expect from a project? Like a few important things.
Yeah, thanks, Shandon. It depends on the stage you're at. Obviously, like I said, going back to the standard things that remarkably I think a lot of people don't do a good enough job at doing are they want to look at the team and the team strength. They also then really want to understand why there is an opportunity in this market, and that they buy into the size of that opportunity is something that's able to drive venture returns. If you're a little later stage, they would be looking at your traction, and that's probably the most nebulous thing, and the thing I see a lot of founders struggle with the most, understandably, because VCs will often go, well, we just want to see more traction, and I say, well, what does that mean? And there's no rubric for that. Everyone's different, but if you're pre-seed or even raising a seed, in Web 2 it used to be like if you had 50k MRR, it was like you were pretty much guaranteed to be able to raise a successful seed round. It's slightly different in Web 3, but you want to be basically looking at positive metrics you can point to, i.e. user growth, TVL growing. You can have a chance to set your own narrative here by picking the data points that you think are valuable. Like I see Kyle in the audience from AmpPay, it's like it might be deposits on your platform, or average card use or card users, or Chrissy, I see again from Flojo, it's like, right, we're selling the drinks cans, and every month or every 3 months on average our sales are doubling or quadrupling. Yeah, exactly. With Carl, their 10x user growth. So there's a range of things depending on the stage, but the basics are really solid team. They can buy into the idea of the size of the market. You've got a solid plan to deliver on that. Then, if you're looking for metrics, it does tend to be things like user growth, TVL, deposit. But you can take, as a founder, if you're a gaming project, you might say, actually, it is, minutes or hours spent on games a week, and that's going up every single week versus just pure user growth. So, as a founder, you can take that opportunity to shape the narrative a little bit more and drive what you think is important to them.
Awesome. Super Simon asked, can you talk about your personal experience attending IRL events, conferences, and building a trust network? What is too much, too little, and where on your journey is it most important?
Yeah, good question, Simon. I'm going to take an opportunity to shill a few things here as well. I traveled a ton. It's taken years. I think the IRL stuff is so important as a founder. It does depend on the stage you're at, but I go to conferences and I try and attend a lot of the super team stuff globally. That's why I said I'm going to take a bit of a shill here. Alex was out in Canada earlier this year for the super team event. We've done the Balkans, we've done France, we've done UK, we try and get everywhere we can. We were in Mumbai last time. To me, it's really important for a few reasons. That you get to look people in the eye, you get a feel for people a lot better than just over Zoom, and you get to sit and watch them in different situations. And it's cliche, but it's true. It's the same in my old business. I was a commodities broker. So spending time with people, when you sit down and have a drink of an evening in a casual setting, you just get to know people and get a sense for them a bit better. And building a trusted network that's part of how you do it. I've made a lot of friends purely online over the years, but when you get to go and spend time with them in a conference or in person, it's lovely. And you get to see their social skills, how they conduct themselves in difficult situations. Kid Paddle, we spent some time together in Singapore this year. I think a huge amount of people I've met, even in this talk, I've met in real life, and it just adds a third dimension, pun intended, to people. I agree with Matt. I think you can over conference, and there's a huge Venn diagram overlap of the people you see. If you're a builder, I think hitting a few of the main ones every year is important, because you've got a chance to incidentally meet people. Leave some of that up to serendipity, but you can attend side events and you can meet people. But equally, you struggle. Like, I pull back at some point, because you need to focus on the work. And if you're building a startup, you'll need to lock away and do that. I think you also need to look at what your strengths are. If that absolutely exhausts you doing it, it's still worth doing, but you've got to understand that you go and hit up maybe one or two of these events and give yourself time to recuperate. Everyone's different, and you need to tailor it to your strengths. Whereas if you're a natural extrovert and you gain energy from that, and your team is mixed, technical and non, you're out there. Like when I was at NeoSwap, that was one of my jobs. I was everywhere and anywhere I could be, and I loved it, and I love meeting people. Whereas we left Cooper, our CTO, to what he was happy with in deving. So yeah, I think IRL is super important. The balance is both slightly personal and equally, I think, identifying high value events. I've just seen is it Ryan Worth ask a question for that. I mean, bang for your buck, I would look at where it depends where you're based locally. Like if you've got super teams around you, a lot of those events really are good and they're local, which can save you a lot of money. And then Matthew, you nailed it. I think Breakpoint and MonkeDAO. MonkeDAO in particular, as a builder, I went there last year, spent some time with Carl there actually, and what I loved was it was very high signal. People weren't there pitching stuff. Apex to Kid Paddle's point, which is sort of like a breakout around Breakpoint in a sense. I mean, we've been to, I think, every single Apex event this year, personally, apart from Mexico City at the start of the year. Again, really high signal. But if you are resource constrained, Ryan, I would look at what's local to you. And it might be things like MonkeDAO events, local chapters. It might be super team events. But you get a chance to go and meet other Solana founders there, and it's amazing. You keep doing these things and showing up that this natural trusted network, to use Simon's term, will expand.
Awesome. Yeah, and I also highly recommend monkey events for builders. And if you're looking to get the best bang for your buck, I'll definitely be reaching out to you at Breakpoint, Kieran, to grab a few of those beers. You mentioned the kind of having an early team member that maybe is more of an extrovert, more comfortable at these IRL events. I've also heard others say it's important for initial startups and these lean teams to be technical focused, and everyone on the team is a developer in some type of way, or maybe they need a designer. Obviously, it depends product to product, startup to startup, but have you seen any consistent trends with maybe team setups or layouts having a certain amount of technical, non-technical co-founders or at least early team members?
Yeah, I had. Just before, I want to say, Jemmy and you, I did say MonkeDAO. Just want you can go back and listen to the recording. This is fake news, so I just want to make sure that that's clear. A lot of people are saying MonkeDAO are great. And to answer your question, yes, I don't. There is no one size fits all. I think that if you ask highly technical people, a lot of them will say, yeah, you just want a solely technical team. If you ask, extroverted, maybe you want to call them more sales-based or relationship-based people, they will say, no, it's always important to have one, and people have their own bias. I've seen people make successes on both sides. It partly depends on your business, right? If it's an extremely technical infrastructure business and you have someone who's technical but has enough of the social skills or the relationships, they may not need that type of person to sell. Equally, some of these teams come together naturally because you'll have someone who is extremely technical but wants the support of someone who's maybe not, but their skills overlap nicely, and that forms more naturally. I don't think there's a one size fits all. I do think it's important to have someone who, at the very least, is someone like myself, who I'm somewhat technical, but obviously I stray more to the other side. But what I've done a lot over the years is distill very complex ideas down to something that other people can understand, and you can bridge those two sides. And particularly in crypto, I think that's important because a lot of people, to the point of this pitch, use so many incredibly technical descriptions, and unless you're involved in that world, it's just very daunting or confusing for people, and even just for some investors. So I think having someone who can act as a translator is maybe the most important bit. If they can fit in the extroverted side for conferences and networking, that's great. I think that's something that can be added later on. But I would say, don't underestimate the power of those people. I think we are in such a technical space. It's very easy for these non-technical skills to be dismissed. And I think that would be wrong. Mango. So I've just seen Mango's question. Honestly, you just gotta practice. Yeah. I mean, it didn't come naturally to me as a teenager. You get seen Kid Paddles reply. Yeah. I mean, that's NFA. I'm not a big drinker, but I guess I'm blessed with a low tolerance or a high tolerance for embarrassment because I grew up ginger with glasses. So, yeah, you just got to get out there and be social, and you will learn what works and what doesn't. I see so many of these advice threads going around pre-conference, and mine's a lot simpler, which is just treat people like humans. You don't go up and just pitch people and spit at their face. Like, ask questions of them, get to know people. It's much more enjoyable anyway. And it's amazing how many people you meet who they may have no relevance to you or could help you, but you just walk away going, I've got a friend for life there. That's a really interesting person and someone you keep in touch with. And who knows where they end up, but that's not the point of the conversation. But yeah, don't, as Moon Settler says, don't be a robot. Ask people questions about themselves. And get to know people on a human level. I think people overthink it and overcomplicate it. It's amazing how often, if you ask someone like, where are you from and what are your interests, and get to know them a little bit, it just calms the situation down. Everyone wants to, be treated like a normal human and to talk about some of their interests. So don't overthink it, Mango. Just get out there, ask questions.
Yeah, I also find it helps, like you said, to ask more about who they are as a person. Like it's very easy to talk about work and Web3, crypto, at these conferences, and definitely a lot of high value conversations around those topics. But getting to know someone more about who they are, I think, makes a lot bigger impact. On the topic of having a translator, someone that can kind of distill a lot of these complicated ideas in an understandable way. I feel like it connects to your slide about a lot of decks or products not having a narrative, not being able to really sell the story, because investors believe and buy stories. And I loved your personal example, or the example you brought up of the founder that had a personal story, and it kind of connected into their overall goal of the product itself. Do you have any advice for founders that maybe are struggling to find that story, to find that narrative? I think oftentimes when we think of narratives, we think of like ecosystem wide narratives. But if I'm understanding you correctly, you're more saying that like the pitch deck itself in a microcosm needs a narrative. It needs a story. Your product that you're selling is more of this kind of theme.
Right. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly how it's meant. It can be then a more ecosystem wide narrative, but that still needs to be made clear in there. I think not everyone will have an immediately relevant personal story, and it can seem forced, but I would encourage teams to sit there and think about that, because people do like the narrative of why you guys have been thinking about some version of this problem, or why you naturally have trended towards it over time, and you are the team to solve this problem. But I think outside of that, if you're looking at wider trends, then it's tying that together also in a compelling narrative. So you might be looking at, I don't know if it's real world assets, or it's like, well, look at stablecoin adoption and the Genius Act and regulatory favorable changes in the US right now. I'm not going to say the UK, and paint a narrative as to why these things are all trending for now. The time is right. I think Chrissy did a really good job at this when I met her with Flojo in the background, her background in health and as a doctor. And you go, yeah, that team's just a natural fit to try and build that product. So you want to try and think about, there are different ways to do it. It might be that it's a much larger meta narrative because you're just an extremely technical team that's interested in solving technical problems, and you haven't been thinking about this idea since you were 15 years old. But then you are looking at wider ecosystem narratives. If you're doing that, to your point though, Benny, you want to make that really clear through the deck and compelling, because it feeds the same point basically there of you're getting a VC to understand, like, these are the important trends, this is what you should be paying attention to in this story. You can think of a deck in some ways like an opportunity to it's kind of like directing a movie, where it's like, I could pick this topic and focus on this area, or I could develop this character and do that. Like, they're deliberate choices as to where you are trying to point the viewer's head and focus.
Makes sense. And speaking of stories, I'm more of a picture book myself. I like maybe comics, some throwbacks, but going into decks, what are your thoughts on graphics overall? Too much, not enough? I've seen both. I've seen situations where some decks feel like it's just absolute chaos, right? There's a million different pictures of the product, or just kind of feels very disconnected with the story they're trying to tell. But how do you think the graphics, images included in decks should really tie into everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're important. This is going to be a really boring answer of it is a bit of both. I think Matthew was saying it earlier, like, there are way too text-heavy decks. I've seen that a lot. It's just text-dense. And then on the other side, ones that are just images, and you walk away from it going, I don't know what the hell they actually do. And that's unclear. It goes back to the storytelling. I mean, I often think that the title slides of the deck, if you just saw them, should run through really clearly, and that each one is driving home one really clear point, and each one builds on the last thing. Here's the big problem statement, here is the solution statement, here's how we as a team are solving that, as an example. Those three things will go together. I think graphics are extremely useful as a tool. If you're doing a user journey or you're trying to explain flows of things, pictures worth 1,000 words is true in those statements. And if you combine that with, again, with clear language, you can communicate a hell of a lot through a couple of sentences in a really clear diagram. The best decks that I've seen have had a mix of both. If you go too text heavy, it's the same as like a presentation at school, or like if I was giving you guys this presentation right now and I'd just written down every word I was going to say on the slide, you wouldn't listen to me. You'd be trying to read the slides, you wouldn't be engaged, and it would be so text heavy that your first thought would be, oh my God, rather than actually listening to what's said. I think, yeah, to Cronus's point, exactly, the graphics need to support the narrative and make you understand why this is important and feed into the story.
Makes sense. I've always preferred, even back in school presentations, having a few bullet points on the slide. It allows you to kind of keep the focus and also slowly walk users or projects, investors through the product itself. Simon asks a spicy question. How do you avoid or handle untrustworthy people in the space, or lurkers who aren't really building anything of value and just kind of waste yours or others' times? Spicy answers only. # Simon emoji.
He's got his own hashtag. That's when you know you've made it. Alex and I are generally pretty transparent. I've met people who've come to pitch us because they just purely wanted, I don't know, a BONK partnership, or a few people who've tried to pitch us that they're going, oh, I just want to flip this business, and we'll say, I'm just not interested in that. I'm not rude. That's not how I am, but I am direct with people. If I say I don't. If I think they're a bad actor, I'm a lot more comfortable saying I just don't believe in this idea and I'm not comfortable with it, or I'm not interested in it. I've had a lot of people sort of in and around the meme coin space doing that. I think there's a difference between just being an asshole, even if we do think they're a bad actor, and being rude, but I will just be direct and say those kinds of things. If I've heard, like you say, about bad actors or untrustworthy people, I try and distance myself from them. I might say thanks, but no thanks to an offer. I might say, we're too busy to consider this, or it's not an area of interest. I will ask around my network on people to say, hey, what do you think of this person? It's still really hard because this space does attract the best and the worst of people. So you have to be slightly guarded with that. And yeah, exactly. Kid battle. I just don't trust the guy as far as I can try him. But yeah, I just find honesty is the best policy. I mean, Alex and I try and be direct with people and transparent, and we've had arguments because of that, and people take it personally. But we're never unnecessarily rude. We'll just be direct with them. If people come to me and it's like all they want is an intro, I might say, look, respectfully, I don't know you, or I don't understand the idea, or I don't think that it's appropriate for me to use the social capital to do this. It makes people uncomfortable, but it's definitely a challenge. Trying to think of like some more aggressive answers, but yeah, I am pretty direct with them, but you still get caught out, right? Like you're always on guard. I lead with trust, which means you get burned sometimes, but for me overall throughout my life, I've also felt that has opened me up to the odd opportunity that wouldn't have come if I didn't do that, and it makes up for all the bad people. If I'm making an intro where I'm unsure about someone, again, I'll just be transparent and say, hey, I've met this guy a couple of times. I think this is an interesting idea, but I can't vouch for them. And I will be transparent about that as well. That doesn't mean it's a negative automatically.
Moon asked a great question. When going around and meeting people, how would you recommend people focus their ideas into an elevator pitch? And I think this is essential, especially with Breakpoint coming up, because there's a lot of people that don't necessarily want to sit there and have a conversation for 10, 15, 20 minutes on about your product. So being able to kind of easily distill or communicate, whatever that may be in a sentence, two sentences, one or two questions, I think is essential.
Yeah, I mean, I would go one way with this as well is to the point we were talking about earlier with approaching people is unless someone asks, I wouldn't tend to pitch someone. If someone asks, what are you building? Obviously, do that. If they're a VC, for example, you might say, hey, I'm building something that I think is really relevant to you guys and your thesis. I'd love to chat with you about it later, but I know that we're all busy and I'm not going to stand here and pitch you right now. If they then, say, no, I'd love to hear more. Again, that gives you the opportunity, but you give people the chance to opt in rather than I've seen so many people just come up with their phone open and go, I want to show you what I'm building with no question. It's a statement. And, it immediately puts people in a standoffish phase, understandably, because you're getting this all day, which we've had at a few of the breakpoints. For the elevator pitch end, it goes back to the unclear language versus clear language and problem statement. I think if you can condense the topic down into the benefits that you're driving to users in one or two sentences, go back to the NeoSwap one, you go, oh, we've invented a platform that lets you spend your assets like money. That is in essence an elevator pitch, and then people can ask more questions if they're curious. And equally, I think I would actually encourage a lot of people to say, you know what? Why don't we follow up next week, for example, after this? I know you're getting pitched all day, every day. I can send you some documents after the case and we can have a follow-up chat about it. So you kind of do a soft pitch with a very clear one or two line problem statement and then retreat a little bit and give people space, to breathe. If they invite more of the question, you can go into more detail then, particularly if it's an area that they're in, particularly interested in and they have the time. But you get the best of both worlds by doing, what I'd call a soft pitch.
On your first slide, you mentioned unclear language being a pretty common problem. Is there any language people should stay away from, try to avoid? I know you mentioned buzzwords, but anything else, any common phrases or words people use in pitches and with VCs that they should just consciously maybe try to stay away from?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. I think when I say buzzwords, I think there are things like if I see, right, exactly, flywheel, you switch off the same. If I see AI agentic X, you go, okay, or the launchpad for Y or versus going into the problem statement. I think they're what I mean when I say buzzwords. It doesn't communicate anything about the product you're building. If you're saying the AI agentic layer for X, you're better off saying like we are automating payments for something. That kind of language will communicate more what you're doing versus it looks like you're just trying to hop on the the AI train. Kid Powder said flywheel. I think two things on unclear language. So there's buzzwords and then there's a bit of a blur, but I think highly technical language, apart from in exceptional cases. Because if I see talking of payment, I was reading about X402 earlier. It's like we're using the X402 excuse me, my mind's pulling a blank now, standard for XYZ. That doesn't add value in what you're communicating. What you might be saying is we're making payments automatic and easier, cheaper, faster, better. So I would think about how you're presenting this language so that people can really quickly understand what you're selling. And if they want to go into technical depth, you can either include some appendices or you can dig into it in a second follow-up conversation. It kind of makes you think of I think it was Einstein quote of, if you can't explain the topic to a child, you don't really understand it. There's a lot of truth in that. You just want to keep trying to distill down what the essence is of what you are trying to build and why that's important. So I would say avoid really highly technical language unless absolutely necessary. And then yes, buzzword things like flywheel and AI agentic layer for X.
And on that topic of trying to kind of distill that information, your next page was on the deck being too long, and I've seen both sides of it. We're going through applications now for Foundry, and there's some decks where it's 4 to 5 slides or maybe 6 slides, and each one feels like it doesn't really provide any information or any value as well. So any maybe advice or anywhere you can elaborate there on decks being too long, not long enough, any sweet spots, or the way I think about it is every slide should have a value, a goal in some way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I find the sweet spot is generally in that 10 to 12 or 10 to 14-ish range. That's excluding an appendix. But you can communicate everything we've just discussed there. And, this is slightly paint by numbers, but it's useful. You can communicate the problem statement, the solution. You could do a user journey. You can explain why the team is elite. You can then paint a roadmap, and you can also have a sort of size of market opportunity and back that up, and then a call to action or an ask at the end. And you do those things with a narrative throughout it. That's a pretty good comprehensive slide deck. Yeah, I mean, I think putting in 5 slides is equally a red flag. It feels like the idea is probably not well thought out, and it's something that's been thrown together really quickly. What tends to happen on the longer slide decks is one of two things. Either it's a very interesting and technical idea, and so the founder or the team just want to include absolutely everything they think is relevant, and they want to answer every single question they think may come up and preempt it. And so they'll put in a lot of they're very information dense. The other side is they haven't actually thought about it very well, and they're just chucking everything at it. I've seen a few VCs talk about this as well when you talk about things like go to market, and I've seen teams presenting 15 different applications for their app versus saying here are 3 that we have identified out of the 20 that we think are the top priorities. When you do that, you demonstrate that you thought about the problem, and you have said, right, this is how we're going to validate the thesis, and we're going to start with this 1, 2, or 3 and work our way down from there. And again, that means you can condense a deck down because you're not presenting 15 different options, which is often a red flag for a VC, because it's like death by too many choices. You don't have positive constraints, and you don't even know where to start. So decks can end up way too long because teams just haven't thought through those options, or they're just trying to over communicate. When it's too short, I tend to find it just means it's not been well thought out, and maybe it's something that's been thrown together pretty quick and last minute, or they're incredibly naive and think they're answering everything. But I've not personally seen a good 5-slide pitch deck ever.
Yeah, me neither. If anyone has any remaining questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. We are kind of coming close to the end of the hour here. One of the last slides that I wanted to double click on was understanding VC motivations. And I would love a little bit more advice or maybe color on that one. Primarily as someone that sees behind the scenes, I think it may be a little bit easier for you to read between the lines when you're going through their X, going through, whatever information docs you can. Any advice for founders looking to figure out what exactly these VCs are looking for, what their motivations are, any kind of guidance or direction?
Yeah, I think really good question, because people just might not know where to start. The obvious places are, like you say, X, but looking at articles and article sections, or the same if they've got blogs, or Substack, Medium, Zora, Mirror, wherever they write. Go and look there, because often they will write about things that interest them or fit into the mandate or the thesis. So look at that. I would look at their websites, both because the website often will lay out, we are a thesis-driven investor, and we're looking into, the tokenization of real-world assets, for example, and that's where their fund is focused. The other thing to look at is their portfolio and portfolio page, whether that's on their website. If not, you can look at it on places like Pitch Deck or Crunchbase, and you can see what kind of businesses do they invest in, and why you think you're relevant. That also gives you a chance, because you may look and think, actually, there's a direct conflict of interest here, so we may be excluded. which gives you an opportunity if you reach out to them to mention that, which shows you've done your research. You might say, hey, we're building this. I see you've invested in Y company. That may be a conflict of interest. If it's not, and you'd be interested in talking further, let's do it. It means you may be a little bit more guarded, but you can see that. So what I said there, articles, looking at X from partners and the direct competitors, looking at their websites, and then looking at their portfolio companies. They're usually really good places to start. You can get a quick feel, within 5 minutes as to what a VC's focused on when they're doing that, and it will give you a chance to, if you think they're a really good fit, you can dig in further. If you see that there's no fit, it saves you wasting a lot of time.
Awesome. We are kind of at the end here. I did want to just kind of pass off to you one last time on BONK and BONK Advisory. What's going on for you guys? Any portfolio companies we should be keeping an eye on, following on X, turning those notifications on for?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm just deliberately not going to mention Kid Paddle now because he said I ignored him earlier. So yeah, so we do advisory work with a bunch of different businesses. Like I say, we're really early stage, and we work on equity or token only basis. We don't do project work with businesses, so we're very aligned with the teams themselves and with projects, like you guys with the Foundry. We're working with Diversify, so definitely don't check them out. Simon says, super interesting business. They're doing a lot in the space right now. Love you really, Kid Paddle. Working with 10 businesses currently. I would encourage you guys to check out Unruggable Wallet that will be launching pre-orders soon. They're a Solana native hardware wallet, extremely impressive, small team, doing some really cool work there. Absolutely love those guys to bits, and like I say, they'll be coming out soon, so turn on some notifications for them if you've not seen them already. WeRate, who I believe also you guys do some work with, and they're a great consumer focused team working on solving the sort of rating and the issues with fake Google reviews, TripAdvisor, etc. Particularly passionate about them. We're working with a couple other projects we work across different chains. So if any of you are interested in Monad, we've got two projects there. Mace, which is the leading DEX aggregator there, they're going live soon, and the same with Haha Wallet, the leading testnet wallet there. But back to Solana, we've also got Daora, which is doing some really interesting stuff around synthetic liquidity for launching tokens. Exactly. Super Simon, Canada Goose is OG monkey and a phenomenal builder. If you want to go bet on the weather and look at DPredict, we've got a company called Ncorp. We're doing some really early stage work with, very technical team, doing interesting stuff around deep in weather information. But that means they've also built on the Seeker a app where it's called Better, BETR Weather, where you can see real-time weather predictions and have a bit of bet on them. And then they've also built DPredict off the back of that, which is basically a white label solution to spin up your own prediction markets, which they may or may not end up looking to raise for. So there's a range of businesses there, Ping Network, that we're doing stuff with, who are doing sort of decentralized bandwidth from home, so you can subsidize your bandwidth cost. I think that's everyone off the top of my head. That's not going to kill me for not mentioning them. Obviously Diversify first, big place in my heart, and then definitely check out Unruggable as well.
Awesome. Love it. Definitely some strong overlap in the projects we're supporting. And you'll be at Breakpoint in the next, was it 3 weeks, I believe?
Yes, we will. I'll be out there 9th to the 14th, I think, are the dates. So there's a golfing event going on the 10th. If anyone here's a golfer, I'll be doing that. Got a team in with Mike Dudas and a couple other guys. So if you're around, and then if not, I will be at the conference with Alex. So please, come and say hello. The big ginger guy with a beard, so usually hard to miss.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really great just kind of learning everything about not only pitching to investors, but seeing more behind the scenes and the way they think. It's super useful, and I know everyone here enjoyed it. If there's any way we can support Monkey Foundry, MonkeDAO can support BONK Advisory, always feel free to reach out. We owe you one. Any final thoughts, any shout outs you want to give before we kind of close up the sessions here?
Yeah, just thanks everyone for attending. Appreciate your time and questions as well. They were really good. Shandon, I do come to some monkey events often in London. Been a bit harder at the moment as I have a pregnant wife and we moved into a new house, so I'm getting into town less than I'd like to, but that will change. But I'll be at the monkey events at Breakpoint, and I'm around. If anyone wants to talk, feel free to reach out or ask. If you're directly in contact with Benny or Jemmy, they can give you my Telegram. But yeah, thank you everyone for being here and asking some great questions. I really appreciate it.
Beautiful. Well, thank you
Yeah.
everyone for tuning in. We'll I think this is going to be the last sessions before we actually kick off the official first cohort that we'll be announcing at Breakpoint Live. Hopefully, Kieran, you'll be at that event. It's going to be at the main monkey event. I don't know where. Jemmy knows all the details on Breakpoint and the events, but hopefully I definitely will see you there. Hopefully I see everyone else in the audience as well. I hope everyone has a fantastic week, and we'll see you next time on some day in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Bern, sorry, I could shill all of the different bonk products. I don't tend to try and not bore everyone, but yeah, there's a bunch of different, bonk rewards. Check out bonk swat. Obviously, there's bonk.fun. We're part of the family, but we're an independent business, and we're a joint venture with them and operate with them. They're great people, but I don't tend to just sort of bore people and ram it down there. So thank you again, everyone. I see all the kind comments. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing everyone at Breakpoint. Yeah, and thanks, Ben.
Amazing. I see we got you up here, Jemmy. Should we close up the stage, or do you have any final thoughts?
All right, just waiting for our friend DJ to come up. Thank you once again, Kieran. See you guys at Breakpoint, especially on 10 December, where we have the kickoff event with some of the most amazing folks out there. All right, see you, and let's bring out our amazing DJ.
Hi, everyone.
Don't you know, pump it up. You've got to pump